Hello everyone, and welcome to a special edition video. In today's video we are going to be covering the much anticipated Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild game. This is a very exciting game, in particularly for fans of the series. It's a game that is very, very, very long anticipated, almost going on close to probably 6 years, I would say. This game is going to be a first in many ways for the Legend of Zelda series. Um, I'm not entirely certain, honestly, what I personally make of it, being a very long-term fan of the game. With the voice acting, that is going to be a new addition to the game this time. More interaction with Zelda in terms of seeing her in different light, which I'm actually very excited about. Um, the difference of having a open world, a vastly open world, uh, the addition of items in terms of them having a set period of time or a number of uses and things of that nature that they break and become disposable. Um, even taking away certain items such as finding hearts out in the grass, in jars, and things of that nature, hitting enemies and being able to get some hearts after killing them, and even taking away rubies and things of that nature in the game in terms of how easy, I guess it is to say, to find them. It wasn't always that easy, but taking away that ability, it will certainly be a very interesting game to see how everything will turn out. We here at UGN are very excited about the game, not just me in particularly. There are many different directions this game can go. It's highly debated as to what timeline this game will fit into. Honestly, I used to care a significant amount about the timeline, and I still do to a very large degree because the overall picture, the overall story of the Legend of Zelda series is still very important, still very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I don't want this to end anytime soon. Um, in certain directions, I think, certain timelines, I think that it could not fit into because it would pretty much end the series. The Hero of Winds, Ganon is sealed away. That timeline, Wind Waker, all of that. That it would not really fit very well with this series for it to take place there, especially since spoiler alert, Hyrule is ultimately destroyed and a new Hyrule is founded. To me, it makes the most sense to be in the Fallen timeline. A strong amount of evidence points to it being in that timeline. Asiana Numa has mentioned in a couple of different interviews that this game will take place in the timeline that has multiple Ganon battles, and the only real timeline that can fit into is the Fallen Hero timeline. The overall theme of the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is also a very interesting um, point to us, as it seems the focus on this game is really survival, which has become a very common um, theme in a lot of games. Most of the time, you see them in zombie games nowadays, which has become very very popular since The Walking Dead and things of that nature. But survival in this game is a pretty interesting theme due to the fact that it is so open world. It is so large of a game. Going from one side of the map to the other side of the map can be quite dangerous. It will take some time. You come across in that amount of travel different times of the day, meaning that you have different cycles of the day that will actually take place. It does seem that survival could fit very well into this, and some of the videos that we have seen on YouTube and different places seem to indicate that the battles can be pretty tough at different times. One of the more interesting parts of the game is that the way it starts out, Link having been in this very deep sleep for about 100 years, and then he awakens, and then we start the game as we know it. It seems to be very different in the series in that Link is the same Link from another video game, which has happened a couple of different times. But in the game itself, aside from Majora's Mask, you don't really get much allusion to that. For instance, uh, the Link from A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening being the same Link, you don't really get that same feeling. And it possibly being the same Link from other Zelda games as well, you just don't get much feeling into that. You don't get any in-game context. Well, Asiana Numa alluded to the fact that we're going to discover what happened 100 years ago. And just about no matter what timeline this is in, I think it's pretty much unanimous across all Zelda fans of the timeline who follow the timeline series, believe that this is going to stint in some way, one or another way, from the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So it really doesn't matter what timeline it fits into. That's probably the direction that it will take. Clearly, there's going to be a lot of firsts. We talked about earlier the voiceover. I have not been a big fan of voicing over anything in the game, just probably because I've become very accustomed to no one having the ability to talk or us hear them or anything like that. But certainly, this game is going to be the first of many changes that we believe you will see throughout the series from now on out. Some of the things that people have talked about is making a female a protagonist, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I don't want to see that game being probably part of the main storyline, due to the fact that you can't have, unless they make a significant change to the story itself. uh, the princess takes the form of, well, is the form of the goddess, and the goddess, probably cannot take the human form of a male. That would be a little weird. So it's those changes to the game that I'm more worried about, not the fact that you actually play a female, but again, it's the overall story of the Zelda game that I want to protect. The overall uh, legend, the overall tale. To me, that's the most important part about the entire series. And that's what makes the timeline so fun, is the fact that you have the overall story and you're trying to piece it together from beginning to end, and all of the games in between. So as long as we can protect that main story, I'm fine with almost any additional inputs that they put into the game, any additions, any changes, or anything like that. I just want that overall story taken care of. Now, we're not many days away now from the release of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. We will be getting ours here for the Switch. I know that there will be many others to get it for the Nintendo Wii U. Supposedly, there's not supposed to be really any difference other than load time between the two games, and even that's really not supposed to be a whole lot. It's mainly hardware limited. Computers have a little bit slower rate reading from a disc than they will from the card, the memory module, if you will. So naturally, you'll see a bit of a difference in that. Supposedly, the entire game, for the most part, is seamless when you are traveling throughout the world. The load times and all of that are supposed to be very barely noticeable, not necessarily unnoticeable, but barely noticeable. So that would probably mean that it won't take very long to load from place to place or part to part. We know that this game will also be different in that you ultimately get to choose what you want to see, what you want to do. I mean, there are entire videos and elements of the history of the game, of the backstory, of what happened, what has happened over the last 100 years, all of that you may or may not get to see based on your decision to actually play the game. Another feature of this game is that almost immediately you're supposed to be able to go and take on Calamity Ganon if you so choose. Now, realistically, how far you would make it, probably not very far if you don't have any other items, especially if you don't have the Master Sword. But within theory, you could go and take him on, but then you would miss the rest of the game. You'd miss the beautiful parts of the game, the interesting parts, the storyline, everything else in the game. I don't know if we will know or be told in the game when we've played or reached a level as far as the story goes that uh, it will maybe direct us and tell us, okay, well, now it is time to go and take on Calamity Ganon. There are a lot of other interesting facts that we won't know until we get our hands on the game, but we are very excited about being able to play, and we are hoping that this will, the next week and a half, 2 weeks, will fly by very quickly. So,